This is another interview with best-selling author RL Poole. Thank you for doing this series of interviews about your extraterrestrial and abduction experiences.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to say, sorry for any air conditioner or fan noise, but it's absolutely necessary. It's brutally hot. So please forgive that.
All right, before we get started into questions about your story, I'd like to tell everyone how I became so interested in all of your stories.
No, it's a good idea. Please.
So last year, around 2, 3 a.m., everything was quiet. You were asleep next to me. I was watching TV. I saw 3 golden orbs come through the wall above the TV. And they were just floating there. I didn't feel fear or anything malicious. And they were there for about less than a minute. And then dimmed and went out. There were no cars. The street lights don't come through the windows. And I felt that they were there for you, not for me. I also felt that they were checking to see if anyone was awake, kind of like a recon mission. When I looked directly at them, that's when they dimmed and went out. After seeing this, I knew everything you have said was true.
No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I know that you had relayed that experience to me, that I was present yet not a witness. But I think it is important that people might want to say, well, why are you so interested in what he has to say? And I think when you have witnessed something like that happen right in front of me, you kind of got to say, yeah, I think he's on the level about it, and I am. And I remember when you first relayed that story to me, everything you said made a lot of sense, and just like you believe me, I believe you.
Thank you. All right, you ready to get started into some questions?
Yeah, sure. Also, let me get a drink.
All right. So, going back to our previous interviews, why are you so negative on Stephen Greer?
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'll say, I know a lot of people like him. Okay? He gives a very convincing front to mostly misinformed or uninformed people. However, as a person who has been an abduction survivor and experiencer, I have met these beings face to face. He is lying. And he's lying about some things that are very important. One of the things that he preaches is that he can teach you how to communicate with extraterrestrials. He wants to teach people, or he thinks he's teaching people, or he pretends, whatever it is, that you can psychically reach out to them and receive this high knowledge. Let me tell you something. You don't know what the fuck you're dealing with. I had previous permission to curse, so I'm going to continue that.
Of course.
He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Do you know that, for instance, the ones that I interact with, the ones who have taken me for 45 years, are the little tiny gray guys, the little ones. Now there's tall grays, there's about 11 different species that visit and interact with this planet. Most of them are hostile to us. you do not know who or what you are communicating with. This is dangerous. What he's teaching people is dangerous. And they could be calling down something that they have no idea what they're doing. They could be inviting death, disaster, all manner of torment onto themselves that they would have otherwise been spared had they not reached out, had they not ever talked to, met, or listened to Dr. Stephen fucking Greer. What he's teaching people is the equivalent of extraterrestrial Russian roulette. Oh, you can send things out, but you are not in control of who picks that up. And I can tell you that of the species that visit this planet, most of them do not like you. And they are smarter than you. And they are technologically more powerful than you. And they can do things to you that you cannot undo. Do not do that. Do not do that. Do you know why I reach out to these guys? It's because even though I don't like what's being done, they have never went out of their way to hurt me. They have, at times when I was injured or in a state of distress, saved me or helped me. They have, over a period of 4.5 decades, shown that they do care about my well-being, at least to some extent. There are other species who do not. And you need to know that. That some of these species, and even perhaps even some among the small grays, are malevolent. They harbor malevolence against you. And you do not want that, because it will be out of your control and it will be too late. I highly encourage everyone to never ever listen to, believe, or practice a single word ever uttered by Stephen fucking Greer. Or it may be the end of you. That's why. Because what he's preaching is ignorant and dangerous and proves to me he has no clue what he's talking about. He's never met one of these guys face to face. I don't care what he's told you. He has no idea what he's talking about, because if he did, he would tell you, be quiet, mind your own business, and hope to not be noticed. That's the best policy. As a person who's been abducted for 45 years, as a person who's interacted with these guys on a weekly or monthly basis for 45 years, I can tell you, you don't know what you're doing. Don't practice that, because you're going to call down something that is going to be so far out of your control that it's highly dangerous. And so I see him as a very dangerous disinformation agent for the UFO cause. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a whole thing, but everything I said is true. He's full of shit, that guy. He's a liar, and a proven liar. And he made a movie called Disclosure, and ironically has had more people sign a non-disclosure agreement than perhaps anyone in the history of humankind. That shows you what he really thinks about disclosure. He wants to disclose everything he pretends to know about them, and doesn't want to disclose anything they find out about himself. Bad policy. Bad policy, Dr. Greer. And that's why I have such a low and negative opinion of someone who gets all the attention, while people like myself, and I think there's lots of other just regular people like me who are having these experiences who get ignored, while the Stephen Greer's push sensationalism and these supposed secrets, that he's a supposed insider, when he has no idea. If he saw one of these beings, he'd probably shit in his pants. He would have no idea what to do. He tries to pretend to be daddy, that he knows everything, and that, oh, it's all, this and that. No. I've been doing this for 45 years, experiencing these things, and I don't have nearly enough answers while he pretends to have them all, yet has had none of the experience. He is not to be trusted. He is to be shunned. And anyone who tries to hype this guy up or legitimize him is part of the problem, and they are just cultists. And that's what he is, in my opinion. He's really trying hard to be an alien cult leader. And he wants to get his foot in the door of exopolitics. And I don't believe that he has the moral or intellectual capacity to fill that role in any way. Fuck Stephen Greer.
Well, all that is understandable. All right. So let's revisit when you had said that you woke up on the table with them. You briefly mentioned that you had something in your lip. What was that?
Oh, when I scared the guy. Yeah. So that night I had a dream, and then I woke up from my dream and I'm on the table and I see the guy and he leans over me and he freaks out. He hits me in the head with that thing. And then I wake up in my bed, and when I did, whenever I know that I've been taken by these guys, the first thing I do is I check myself everywhere. Okay? One of the things that I know will happen is I'll wake up with 2 little marks on my hand, 1/4 of an inch apart. 2 little marks. It looks like 2 little needles were inserted in my hand. Not deep, barely break the skin. And I know that that's one of the signs. The other sign is that I wake up just feeling like the grossest person, and I'm super thirsty, and all I want to do is wash my hands and my face. And so I went to the bathroom to do that, and I see the marks on my hand, so I know it wasn't like a dream or anything. I was taken, and I'm washing my hands and face, and I noticed, oh, I do have a bump there. Oh, that's where he hit me. And I was like, oh. It's like, just a little owie, but not, it didn't even bruise. It's just a little raised red spot. And then as I'm putting water in my mouth and my tongue, I feel it bump into something. I'm like, what's that? And it felt like a little round BB inside my lip, like a little round plastic BB that wasn't there before, obviously. Now it's like, did I bite my lip? Like you do something. And I was like, no, it doesn't hurt. And I even could like manipulate it. I could like move it like around. It would kind of slide around, like it was kind of loose in there. And I believe what they did was they put a tracker, or whatever you call it, an implant. It was that I woke up on the table during implant surgery. And that was the other thing too. Like, I think I really did scare the shit out of him, because they're really afraid of like somebody like me waking up on a table, like, no way. But I think the other thing was, I think he was also concerned that, oh, you don't want to be awake for this, like what we're doing, like, oh no, you don't want to be awake, because this is probably going to be owie to you if you're awake. Nobody wants to wake up on the operating table. And any doctor or nurse who saw that would immediately want to put you back out so you don't suffer or hurt. But also, they're tiny and they're afraid of us, and I'm big and I'm strong and they're not. And I'm sure that was the other concern was but I thought about that later. I was like, oh, I bet I woke up during the surgery and he was like, oh no, don't be awake for this part, buddy, and out you go. But yeah, so I had this implant in my lip. Oh, and it drove me to the brink of insanity. All I did was just mess with it, fool with it. And then I was like literally this close to just cutting it out of my lip because it was driving me that crazy. When one day I moved from one state to another. I moved from Ohio to Pennsylvania. And I was crashing on a friend of mine's couch while I was finalizing my house. And I woke up and it's gone. And I thought, oh, did they take it? Am I out of the program or whatever? And no, they moved it. I believe it's right here behind my ear. They placed it in a place where it's not easy to get to and it's out of the way. I think they realized putting it there was kind of a bad idea. But I believe what they did was move it from here to back behind my right ear. But I could still feel like they must have taken it out of whatever like little casing it was in or something, because I can still feel that casing in my lip right here. Like it's still there. It was almost like they cut it and took it out. And I think they put it in some kind of protective casing so the body doesn't reject it. And it feels like a plastic BB. It still feels the same. It feels like just what was in my lip, only it's right here, right behind my earlobe, right there. But yeah, that's what happened. Was that little thing? What I think was an implant that they were putting in, and I woke up during the procedure.
Okay. All right. So there's been sightings around volcanoes, the ocean, and especially when there's earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. What do you feel that is? What do you feel the reason is for that?
Well, I know why. Guys. The reason is because that's where they live. I mean, what they do is they inhabit places that we can't go. Nobody's climbing up to the top of a volcano to check to see if there's a UFO in there. See, their technology allows them to inhabit extreme environments, high pressure, high temperature, things like this. And so that's what they do. They will be in the ocean where we can't find them. They'll go in and hide inside of volcanoes where we don't go. And when you see them, like hovering beside a volcano that's erupting, it's because they felt the tremors of it, and they know that it's about to erupt, and they're simply moving out of the way. It has just displaced them temporarily while it's doing that. When you see several UFOs come out of the ocean all at once, there's probably an earthquake happening underwater. And they will know about these before we do. So you could almost look at UFOs as an early warning sign of disasters. They're not causing them. They just know about them first because that's where they live.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. So there's a fallacy on anal probing. Why?
Yeah, and it's such a punchline or whatever, And so there's two reasons why they do this. No, they don't care about your poop. Okay, they're not. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. They do it for either one of two reasons. One is they will do this at times that it's like a stimulus to create an ejaculation in males. But the other thing, even if it's not used for that purpose, or if it's used on females or males who are not being taken for that purpose, it is you're not being probed, you're being plugged. Just so you know. Remember when I said humans are icky? Mm-hmm. Okay, so they are insane about contagion, infection, anything like that. There is a zero tolerance policy for this. And one of the big fear reactions, I mean, we say it all the time, like, remember, you're like, oh man, I saw this and I almost shit my pants, because that is a human fear reaction. And this is something they do not and cannot have happen on their ship. They literally cannot do that. So what they do is they take those kinds of precautions where they will plug you so that way you cannot expel waste on their ship and contaminate it with your waste. Because one of their great downfalls, one of their big problems, is the inability to withstand contagion or disease. And so this is one of the protocols that they will follow. And this also carries over into cattle mutilation. One of the things that you'll know about a true cattle mutilation that's been caused by these guys is the anal section of the cow will be cored out, and the intestines will be gone. All that will be gone. That is literally step one. They literally just remove all that because they know that animal, if they don't do that, is going to contaminate the entire ship with its waste, and they cannot have that. So that's the real reason why they do this, is to prevent their ship's contamination with human waste based on fear reactions.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the question I have now is, you brought something with you.
Yeah.
They're black stones. What do they signify?
Right. So, for a long time, when I was being abducted, starting from about 2006 to, I want to say 2020, almost every time that there would be a visitation or there would be a change in my environment or something like this, I would be left one of these black stones. This isn't all I have. I had so many of these that so years ago there was a movie that came out called Knowing. It starred Nicolas Cage, and it involved aliens. And see, this is the little stuff they do. These little tiny pieces of truth get inserted into movies that are completely fictitious, but they slip in a tiny bit of truth. And my son, we watched this movie together. We both liked it very much, but he knew that I had an enormous collection of these. I had an entire cigar box filled with nothing but black stones. And in this movie, Knowing, they showed that they left a black stone with these folks for certain reasons. And that happened to me over and over again. I would wake up with one of these stones in my pocket when I would wake up. I'd wake up in my bed and everything, I'd have that feeling, I'd have those marks, and I would have one of these in my pocket. Or this one would be sitting on my bedside table. And then this one, like one would be set on my front porch for no reason. Like when I moved from one place to another in Pennsylvania, I remember the night before thinking, oh, I wonder if they know where I'm at now. And when I showed up for my first day to live there, that stone was setting in a very specific place on the porch. Like they knew. The very last time that I received one, I told them mentally, I said, if this is you, tell me it's you. Okay? So this is what happened. I wake up, and on my table, like not my bedside table, but like my chair side table in the living room, this stone was given to me. And it is a black stone, and it is in the shape of them. of their face, of their head, as if to do both things at the same time. Like, yes, it's us, and this is us. And these are the ones I've accumulated the past few years. But years ago, I had a cigar box full of these that I gave to my son, because when we watched the movie, he also realized, oh, you're telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're telling the truth. And they put this in a movie. And, of course, I have no other reason for having a giant box of random black stones. And I don't know where they come from. I feel like it's some kind of clue, because they're all relatively the same, and they all look like river stones. They're all smooth. They're all jagged. They all look to be of relatively the same composition. And I have been given an endless amount of these stones in different ways, in different places, in different times. But I don't know the purpose. I don't know, is this from their home? Are these tokens? Like they give me, like you would give a dog a treat, like you were a good boy. Here's a present from us, or a gift. I don't know the reason for them. I just know that I keep being given them by those guys, and I don't think that like they're just stones. Like, I don't think they're anything like precious in like earth or human terms, but to me these are the most valuable thing I have, because they came from a very special place. And they signify a bond that I've had with another species for 45 years. And I consider them to be very special, but this one is my favorite because it looks like them.
Nice. Well, they're very nice stones, no
They're
matter
beautiful.
what the reason.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So, next question is, how do their suits work?
So, you remember I was telling you their complete obsession with contagion. So, one of the other signs that I was having when I was really being abducted a lot was I would break out. Like, my skin on my body would break out in different places pretty severely. And my son had noticed I had my shirt off, and I was trying to look at my back, and I was telling him, I was like, can you look and see? I was like, I'm sorry, but can you look? And he looked, he was like, yeah, you are broken out. And then he like looked at my back and then put his hand up, and he's like, check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. He was like, it's like right where fingertips would be. He's like, it's like somebody touched you. And I was like, oh. So I asked them, I was like, I'm really, really reacting to something. What, are you doing something? And they said, it's the way their suits work. So they have like an impermeable layer that goes like against their skin, their body. And then there is a porous layer that is on top. Now, in between those two layers, there is an acidic protein that is between those two layers. So, and it's an acidic protein that is super sticky. It is so sticky that it sticks to everything, but nothing sticks to it. It makes their suits waterproof. It even prevents, they said, the passive stuff like in the air, like spores or fungi or anything like that that should happen to land on them. This acidic protein kills it. And they said sometimes people react to it. Their skin reacts. And I reacted by every place I was touched would have like a very large boil. But it would be like in the shape of a hand print, like fingerprints. So they had requested that when I sleep to wear a shirt, so that way when they handle me, if they must touch me, that it wouldn't touch my skin, it would touch my clothing. And I have woken up with clothing that had faded dots on it. And I actually saw this one other time, but it wasn't me. It was the Betty and Barney Hill case. And Betty and Barney Hill, for people who know about abductions, were like basically the first people to really report being abducted in the modern era. And Betty had held on to her dress, and it was the zipper was torn and there was damage to it. But the thing I noticed was that it was like a pretty like dark blue dress, but it had these very faded pink marks. And I knew what that was. I knew she was telling the truth, because that was that acidic protein. They had touched her and she had struggled, and it caused that protein to come out through the pores of their suit and touch her clothing, and it had faded or eaten away at the dye that was in the material and caused these spots to remain behind. And like, for instance, like in the drawing that I showed where the guy like bent over me and saw me, like, he looks different than how they look. And the reason is because he's wearing a mask. He's wearing a helmet over his head, and then he's wearing this completely covering suit. And so this is why sometimes descriptions will vary, even if we're talking about the same being, because it's the difference between seeing one with or without a helmet. Because when you see them with a helmet, all you see is a featureless face, and you see these eyes. There's nothing else, because it's all contained within this helmet. But they do have features. They have like little noses and little mouths, and I didn't notice ears. I don't think they have ears, or if they just like a hole, just like a little hole there. So this is why sometimes those descriptions will differ, even if you're talking about the same being, because some people will see one without a helmet, and some people will see them with one. I've seen them both ways.
Okay.
And I can tell you physically, they have the ones I saw have 5 fingers and 6 toes. And there may be an enormous amount of variation between them. I don't know that. But I can tell you the ones I've encountered have 5 fingers, proportioned differently than ours. Their hands are like really tiny, like a child's, but their fingers are longer than a child's would be for the same size. And they have very small little feet that have 6 little perfect toes. I didn't notice like nails. Like, I don't think they have like toenails or fingernails. The ones I saw. But I'm sorry, you were asking me about the suit. Yeah, and so that they explained to me that's how their suit works, and that was why I was experiencing those problems with my skin. And and then I just started sleeping with a shirt on, and then that problem went away. But occasionally, I would have to throw away a shirt because it would be ruined by little, what looked like little fingerprints all over
Oh, wow.
it because of that acidic protein that's in their soup. Pause for a second. I need a drink. Sorry.
All right. So I have one last question for you, and it may be a pretty big question. What?
Well, it may be a short answer. I don't know because I don't know everything.
What is their real mission?
I do know that. And I asked them this because I had asked them why they took me. And I say, why are you taking me? And they met me in person and told me, touched me, right here and said guardian. But I knew that wasn't the only thing they were doing. I realized once I got that download from them that that's a very small piece in a very large, organized thing. And so I did ask them, why are you here? And they said the most profound thing to me. I still remember it pretty much word for word. But the speech, the download starts out, what happens when evolution stops being your friend? You see, they are an ancient species, and they have been around so long that they are starting to evolve out of existence. You see, their brains, and every species, the higher you evolve, the larger your brain must be to accommodate it. Well, the larger that your brain becomes, the smaller your body must become to accommodate the brain. And their brains are enormous in relation to the size of their bodies. So the brain is starting to take over dominance. It's taking precedence over every other function. And so many of these beings are being born sterile. Some of them are being born without genitalia. Many of the women are too small to carry their young to term or to give live birth. Even if they do, it will kill them. So they decided many years ago that in order to trick evolution, they would have to find a way to turn back the clock. And so they found our species, our very primitive Cro-Magnon species. And they saw we have big, sturdy bodies. We have really strong immune systems. We're not too great. This is what they told me, is that they altered our species. Okay? And what they did was they clipped out pieces of our DNA, which would allow our brain pans to expand, to allow us to become smarter, that we would lose much of our body hair, that we would develop in a way that was more like them. And then what they want to do, some of us are crossed with them. So their plan was they created this new species of us. And it's kind of like the Adam and Eve story. They created the first man and the first woman. And they said, be fruitful and multiply. In other words, fuck like rabbits and make a bunch of you. You have our permission. Go have fun. So they would have a broad selection to choose from. And their plan is that they take us, the new version, which is part primitive and part evolved, and you get us, right? So then now they take us and them and cross us again, and what you get is the new species, where they will have our physical advantages but not lose their intellectual and psychic telepathy advantages. And that will be their new species. And in doing so, they turn back the evolutionary clock millions and millions of years, and can continue as a species and a culture. And the ones that are doing this know that they won't be around to see this project to its... They won't see what it will become. They are planting trees in which they know they will never sit under the shade. They are desperately trying to save their species. And that's why they're here. Is they are using us. They created us, and they are using us to save their species from extinction. What happens when evolution stops being your friend? They have come to the end of the line of evolution, that they are about to evolve out of existence, and they want to continue their line. And so they saw us as a means to an end. I have something I'd like to say about that.
Sure.
There have been many events that have changed the genetics of certain people on this planet. There have been recorded interventions in our genetic line. If you read the book of Enoch, Enoch tells the true story of Moses. Not Moses, Noah. He tells the true story of Noah. Moses is a whole other story. Noah. He tells the true story of Noah because Enoch was Noah's great-grandfather. And he was there when Noah was born. And they talk about when Noah was conceived. That Noah was conceived without the husband of Patinosh, who was Noah's mother, being around. The husband wasn't around. He was out in the fields tending his flock. And Patinosh was a goodly woman. In other words, she was a good girl. She didn't do anything bad. But the entire family was extremely perplexed as to how this happened. And so they went to Lamech, and then they went to Enoch. And Enoch spoke with God. Enoch was favored by God. And the gods told Enoch that they had made an insemination inside of Patinosh. This is artificial insemination thousands of years ago, recorded in first person. Enoch was the first person in history to ever tell the history in first person. I was there, I saw, I spoke, I heard. And he tells the first person story of artificial insemination in his family. And they tell him to let this happen and that Noah will be the first of a new line of being, a new line of human. And Noah was born. And Noah, the description of his birth by Enoch is compelling. He says that when Noah was born, when he came out, he glowed like hot coals. That his hair was shock white. And that the moment he was born, they said he opened his mouth and praised the Lord. What that means is that when Noah was born, those guys tested his reception ability immediately to see if it had worked. And it had. And the other thing that they said about Noah, which was the only person in existence known at the time, was that he was the only person born with blue eyes. Mm-hmm. He was the first person born with blue eyes. Mm-hmm. And this is also a trait among them, that they have blue or green eyes. Mm-hmm. And this was in the Middle East, where, I gotta tell you, blue eyes and blonde hair do not happen. In fact, at this time, everybody on Earth was practically the same. They all had brown or some tone of brown skin. They had dark hair or black hair, and they had brown eyes. Because we live in a hostile environment where these physical protections allowed you to sustain your life. And whenever I see someone with blue or green eyes, I know that you are looking at a descendant of Noah. Now, I'm not a biblical person, not a religious person, but I do believe in history. And I do not believe that Enoch, the scribe, was lying in any of his descriptions. What I believe was that he was misinterpreting, because he was being told something by a species that he could not question. And I also want to bring that up. By the way, that line continues today. I have blue eyes. My son had blue eyes. And every person I meet or see that has blue or green eyes is a descendant of that very line. That recessive gene has actually carried forward for thousands and thousands of years and is still prevalent. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that I have silver blue eyes and that they're interested in me, because I think they know that I'm at least in a tiny part of that same line. But I'd like to talk about that, because there is this misconception, I believe, about science and about religion that needs to be addressed, that we take these experiences that were written in a book 2,000 years ago of people telling you that they met gods, or they met angels, or they've seen demons. If you went back 2,000 years ago and showed them a flashlight, they would hit the ground and worship you. You're magic. You have the power of the gods. You turn night into day. They had no technological reference for any of the things they saw, and were forced, really, to believe whatever they were told. And if they told you that they were gods, well, then what choice would you have but to believe them? Because they could do things that you could not even imagine 2,000 years ago. These things come from the heavens, and they float like clouds in the sky, and they glow like pure light, and they can do anything. They could walk through walls. They could do anything you can imagine. They can read your mind. 2,000 years ago, that sure sounds like a god to me. Now, thousands of years later, we have a better technological reference. We're also a little harder to fool. Not quite as naive, but I can't tell because people want to still believe or take at absolute face value what people 2,000 years ago said to be true, and those same people won't believe me about what happened last week. Very selective in what we believe, and so people say, well, you know, I need evidence. I've shown you evidence. I've shown you drawings. I've shown you the things they give me. I've shown you pictures of the marks that they leave. I've given my own testimony, firsthand, eyewitness. This happened to me. You say that you want the truth, but how many of us are psychologically prepared to accept it? Because I've done my due diligence. I've had these experiences, and I've relayed the truth and the proof to the best of my ability. But how can you show me that you have the ability to accept the truth and to process it at a rational level? The same people who are unscientifically skeptical about my experiences or people like me telling their experiences have no problem believing what a bunch of savages thousands of years ago scribbled down on a notepad. They wouldn't know an airplane from a fucking pterodactyl. They don't know shit from Shinola, a glass goblet from a shitline shoe. They don't know. Because they were very, very, very primitive people with no technology, no frame of reference, and were as innocent and naive as human beings have ever been. So what I say is that you're prepared to accept the words of people thousands of years ago on faith, but you won't take my word even when I present evidence. You want the truth? Show me that you are rational and intelligent and can accept and process the truth when it's told to you. Because I guarantee you, everything that I've said to you is 100% the absolute truth to the best of my ability.
That's awesome. Thank you for your time today. This concludes the questions, unless you have anything else you would like to add.
I'd like to just say one more thing is,
Absolutely.
all you guys who've been watching these interviews and giving me this great feedback, you're why I'm still doing this. Because I've found a very small clutch of rational people who know the truth when they hear it, and they know proof when they see it, and that they can take someone and say, that person's not lying, that person's rational, and listen to what they're saying to us. And they're doing it at risk of their reputation, even risk of their own life. They'll tell you. I treasure those people, and I'm very grateful for you. And I'm so grateful that that's why I'm willing to put it all on the line and say all of these things that I know to be true. Because I know that there are a few of you out there who are capable of understanding and processing this and believing it and using it for the future. So I want to say thank you.
All right, well, this has been an interview with best-selling author RL Poole. We look forward to more interviews.
We'll see.
All right. Well, thank you again.